I also questioned the Sunday school teachers about the dinosaurs. Like I was
Mhm.
that annoying kid, right?
So
Mhm.
maybe God did this to me on purpose.
I got to the point in my life at 50 years old that I said, this is all bullshit.
You said that your kids actually got there before you. Was that you guys or somebody else?
Yes.
To the person that would say to you, "Oh, well, see, that's the issue. You were never saved. You never had a relationship. You had a contract."
I don't know, because I guess it depends on the translation. But my one big hang up, the thing that I did not want to let go of, is the eternal life aspect.
So I'm here with Scott Loco, aka Scott Vapinton. Those who've been following the Brady saga on Facebook, you've seen someone chiming in, a character, as it were, Scott Vapinton, chiming in on my posts. They call you guys. They call you guys my minions.
Yes.
Because when I post,
Yes.
you guys jump on and like amen
That's
certain
right.
things or challenge people. But this is Scott Vapinton, Scott Loco. Um, we're going to do a life after faith episode here because I just want to hear. I would like people to understand who are these people who are chiming in, saying Brady's not alone, Brady's not crazy. Matter of fact, you were there before Brady was there. I remember when I started kind of just letting the cat out the bag little by little at the end, well, midway through 2020.
Mm-hmm.
And towards the end of 2020, you kind of like were sniffing it out, like, yo, something's up with Brady, like something's going on here.
Oh
And
yeah.
uh, and so we'll talk a little bit about that. But
Yep.
uh, you're a former Christian,
Correct.
former Jesus worshiper.
That's right.
How many years of your life did you spend as a Christian?
So I would say as a firm belief,
Mm-hmm.
I would say probably 50 years.
15 or
50 years.
50? 50.
50, 50.
50.
I mean, I'm counting the childhood years,
Yeah.
but you know,
If you can trace firm belief into your childhood, that's cool. We'd like to hear that
yeah.
story. So, how did you come to belief and then firm belief?
So, I've watched a lot of your episodes, and
Mm,
so I think that I have a different perspective, and
okay.
also from a lot of your followers on Facebook. So, um, it's an issue that just came up the other day when we were kind of talking about how atheism is the default.
Mm,
So
yeah.
I'm gonna counter that just a little bit,
Okay.
because so I was born
Oh,
in
I'm sorry. Hold
January.
on. Just because you
Yeah.
introduced that, let me just catch people up. So,
Okay.
I made a post where I said life is just one long road to atheism, and then somebody came on and said, no, atheism is the default. That's how we come into the world, not believing, and then we start believing. And so,
Right.
if anything, to correct my post, they would say life is one long road back to atheism because we start off not
Right.
believing, then we believe, and
Right.
then we whatever. But you
Right.
challenged that and you said no, belief can be a default too, and you want to explain how that could work out.
Right. Because for me, um, so I'm fortunate in one sense that I was born into a very benign version of Christianity,
Mm,
also known as Lutheranism.
mm-hmm.
Um, so it was very benign. Like compared to some of your followers and some other people that you've done videos with,
Mm,
like we didn't get a mandate on Sunday to Monday go to school and like save souls. Like that was never
gotcha.
like the thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So but why I consider that my
Mm,
default is because I was born in January 1971. I was baptized in March of 1971.
mm.
Okay. And then, so basically, 2 months old, they got me in the church. They're
Mm,
sprinkling me. Like we
mm.
didn't do immersion. We didn't do immersion. Um, so, but like every Sunday through my entire childhood,
Yeah.
right? So that was my kind of my pushback to what you guys were saying, because
Mm,
I don't feel that I really had a choice, right?
got you.
This is like full on indoctrination.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and now where my position is at, like I start to see a lot of parallels to like
Mm.
Santa Claus and the Easter Bunny and the Tooth Fairy, and like like we don't get a choice in that either. They just tell us like this is
Mm.
it. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
um, so yeah, so I was raised in the Lutheran Church,
Mm.
like full on, because like Lutheran is like Catholic light because Martin Luther was a Catholic monk. So I went through the whole catechism and
Mm.
confirmation, like the whole
Gotcha.
nine. So my formative years was indoctrination
From the time you
into
begin to know anything,
anything.
you knew God.
Right, that's right.
Gotcha.
So I
Yeah,
think
I
I
get
think
that.
I think in that Facebook post, I think you had mentioned seeking, and I
Mm.
didn't feel for myself anyways
Mm.
that I was ever seeking anything,
Gotcha.
right?
It was
Like when
presented to
you're
you.
correct, when you're
Yeah.
a kid, you're not really seeking because you're
Yeah.
not really free to think for yourself
Mm.
because you're
You
under the
don't know what to
influence
even
of
think about. You don't even know the
correct.
categories of
That's
somebody
right. That's
introduces
right.
the categories to you
That's
before
right.
you get to the point of asking where did X come from. They just come and
That's
tell
right.
you, hey, here's where things come from. I
That's
get
right.
that. I get that. Yeah. Okay.
But I mean, if I'm being honest with you, like I do remember times like in Sunday school as a
Mm.
kid that I did have like a bent towards skepticism
Mm.
because um I was born in 1971, so even in the 70s, they were still talking about the moon landing.
Mm.
Um, so we had so of course the way my brain worked is like we went to the moon, where's God? um
Mm.
I also questioned the Sunday school teachers about the dinosaurs. Like
Mm.
I was that annoying kid, right? Like how come
Okay.
there's like if these things were that big, like they don't even
Mm.
get an honorable mention in Genesis, like
Mm.
really? And
Wow.
but I was raised very well versed in the Bible. Like that's
Mm.
what the whole catechism thing is about.
Gotcha.
But like I said, in Lutheranism, and to be fair, there's different. I mean, I think this is true of all denominations, but in Lutheranism, there's different sects, right? So
Mm.
um, you have the LCA, which is what I was raised in, which eventually merged with the ELCA. That's the left leaning liberal wing of Lutheran. So we're talking female pastors.
Mm.
They're actually ordaining trans pastors now. So
Mm.
like that's the ELCA. Then we have the middle of the road, which is the Missouri Synod. They're kind of like
Mm.
I want to say middle of the road, but they're actually conservative. And then you have the far right,
Mm.
the the MAGA of the Lutheran world, the Wisconsin Synod.
Mm.
Um, and so that I've actually attended all of those churches
Mm.
and a bunch of other ones, Brady. And
Okay.
we'll get to that. But the last church that Lori and I attended was actually one of the very far right wing
Mm.
uh mega Lutheran churches. And it kind of was a catalyst to
Mm.
what was about to happen to my faith as I
Wow.
deconverted.
Okay.
So
So let me ask you this: being catechized and never not knowing God,
yeah.
do you remember a time, a moment maybe, where it hit you that you, like you said, this is now firm belief and it's personal as opposed to just the air that you breathe being raised in it? You kind of internalized it. Do you remember a time where it kind of became real and personal for you?
Yeah, I mean, like I know the exact moment.
Mm.
It's what I call my on fire moment. Like when I
Okay.
was like lit up, right? I was lit up for the Holy Spirit.
Mm.
But it's much later in life, Brady,
Mm.
honestly, because like I just like as through my childhood, it was always like very I wouldn't say it was firm. It was just like kind of
Mm.
like expected of me.
Gotcha.
Um, even so I joined the Navy when I was 21,
Mm.
and I'll be honest with you, I did go to chapel services on Sunday, but that was only so that we could get out of cleaning the compartment, right? Like if you like anybody that had any bit of religious belief would go to chapel so they didn't have to clean. So that was in boot camp. After boot camp, like I was like whatever.
Mm.
Um, but I never denied that I was a Christian.
Mm.
I just wasn't really living it, if you know what I'm
Mm.
saying. Like
Yeah.
I wasn't living it, but I was a Christian. Um, so what happened was, so Lori and I both had previous marriages.
Mm.
I was married while I was in the Navy. She was also married. So when I got out of the Navy, coincidentally, my marriage lasted as long as I was in the Navy. So my first one. And so I went to work for a computer company where I was a field engineer. Lori was an operations coordinator. That's how we met. We became friends, and then we fell in love. When we decided to get married, for some stupid reason, I was like, "Oh, I think we should get married in a church." Right? I don't
She
know
was not. She
why.
wasn't religious at all.
No, like
Okay.
Lori, like Lori's only religious experience was when her hungover mom would put her on the Sunday school bus to the Baptist church, right?
Okay.
Because she didn't want to deal with the kids,
Right.
right? So so that was Lori's only. And then I think when she was a teenager, she had some Pentecostal
Hmm.
tent revival experiences. I think she told you about that, about a healing thing or something,
Hmm.
where they laid hands on her and she wasn't feeling anything, and so they just pushed her down. So she loves to tell that story, but so she wasn't like totally freaked out when I said I think we should get married in a church. Coincidentally, neither her first marriage or my first marriage, none of it wasn't church, right?
Hmm.
But I told her that I felt like it's important that we should get married in a church. So we went to ELCA, liberal Lutheran church, and they wanted us to do counseling with the
Hmm.
pastor. So we did. We went through all that.
Hmm.
We got married in the church by that pastor. Um, we attended for a little bit,
Hmm.
and
Why?
then I don't know.
And
I
why
felt
was
just like
she? Why was she? Hmm.
she
Not
was
being
going
religious. Yeah. Go ahead.
she was going along to get along. I think
Okay.
because um, when I say we attended for a little bit, please
Hmm.
do not mistake that. It's literally like less than a month. Um,
Okay.
but so then, okay, so Lori gets pregnant.
Hmm.
We're both super happy. We're buying all the baby stuff. We're talking about names, everything like that. This is like, I don't know, we got married in 2000. So this is like 2001, like maybe
Hmm.
a year later. Um, so we go to the appointment to hear the baby's heartbeat. No heartbeat.
Hmm.
So this was devastating. Like this was a devastating period in my life because I felt like, this is a person that I was truly meant to be with.
Hmm.
I mean, we've now been together 23 years, so I'm pretty accurate on that.
Hmm.
Um, but I felt like this is who I'm supposed to be with, and we were so excited to have this baby, and we lost the baby.
Hmm.
And so my inclination, because of my indoctrination, was
Hmm.
to shake my finger at God. Why did you do this to me? Why did you um
Hmm.
why did you lead me to this person that I'm supposed to be with, but then you take this away from me, right?
Hmm.
And then in that moment, I convinced myself that I heard that inner voice,
The
right?
indoctrination kicked in.
It did.
Yeah.
But I heard that inner voice that said, "What have you done for me lately?" Right?
Hmm.
Because we weren't practicing, right?
Right.
And
Right.
and so this was what lit the match
Hmm.
to light my ass on fire, right? Because then I was like, I told Lori, I'm like, we're going all in. We're going all in.
So hold on. Let's
Now,
stay there for a minute. Well, go ahead.
yeah.
You seem like you're about to take. Are you about to go somewhere else? Because I want to dive into that.
No, we can dive into that, but I was just going to say that it's because of that that
Hmm.
I even know who you are.
Okay. Well, let's get there in a second. But
Okay.
think for those watching, think about what Scott just said. You spent your entire life, especially the formative years, getting this indoctrination. That God is, that God is love, that God is powerful, that God is active, that God has a will, that God is active in the earth, all these things. And then even when you distance yourself from God in terms of how you live, when the rubber met the road and life got rough, you said the indoctrination kicked in and made you start shaking your finger at God. But I was thinking when you said that, no, indoctrination wouldn't make you shake your finger at God as much as just the idea that he's up there might make you shake the finger. I think
Mm-hmm.
indoctrination kicked in where when you shook that finger, then the indoctrination kicks in and says, like you said, well, what have you done for me lately?
Right.
Because now you're like, well, wait, do I even have any right to shake my finger at God? Because I haven't I haven't been working for him. I haven't been living for him. So
Mm-hmm.
maybe God did this to me on purpose or allowed this to happen just to get me to look at him and
Mm-hmm.
draw me to him.
Right.
That's a wild way for it to come back into your life.
Right.
As
Right.
opposed to the indoctrination coming in and saying, don't worry, Scott, I still love you, or, I've got a plan. All that indoctrination did was it painted this picture of a quid pro quo kind of I took David's son when David sinned, and I did
Right.
that, all these other
Right.
ideas of what could be
That's right.
happening in heaven. I just think
That's
that's
right.
worth thinking through of
Yeah.
how the indoctrination showed up in your moment of need.
That's right.
Yeah.
So at that stage, that's when I was like, yeah, we're going all in. We're diving like all the way in. And
Hmm.
so, this is when well, first of all, I went to a non-denominational church like
Mm-hmm.
shortly thereafter,
I'm sorry.
which
Hold on. I'm sorry. There's
that's all
more.
right.
When you go to Lori and you say, we're going all in, do you
Yeah.
say to her, because I think the reason why we lost the baby is because we haven't been going all in? Do you communicate that? And how does she
Yeah,
respond?
yeah, yeah, yeah. So, but I also think that she went along because unfortunately this all happened in a period of grief, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
like technically she was vulnerable,
Got you.
right? She was vulnerable to my indoctrination kicking in. Um,
Mm.
and because she
Wow.
wanted, because she wanted the marriage to work, she went along to get along. Um, but she always considered the Lutheran church because her experience was the tent revival. So
Mm-hmm.
she always considered the Lutheran with the organ like very boring, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
um, but my sister at the time was going to this crazy like New Age church that was meeting in a movie theater, a non-denominational, which I'm now convinced there's no such thing as a non-denominational because they all
Mm.
have some foundation
Right.
behind them.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So so we started attending that church and it was cool, man. It was like rock and roll and it was
Mm-hmm.
and it was new age and the message bible with the rice krispie treat recipe in it. I mean, it's like so we were like totally digging this.
Mm-hmm.
And then the thing that always seems to be my downfall,
Mm-hmm.
okay, when it comes to church is I started volunteering and started serving, right? Or like for me, it's like the Wizard of Oz when they look behind the curtain, like it's the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
So the very charismatic pastor from that movie theater church, they eventually like outgrew the movie theater and built their own building, because they were fleecing the hell out of people,
Mm-hmm.
and having prayer offerings and um, so I started well, Lori and I both started volunteering to teach Sunday school. That was totally cool, other
Mm-hmm.
than the fact that we were indoctrinating children. But we had a lot of fun with the
Mm-hmm.
kids indoctrinating them.
Okay.
But then they asked because of our business, they asked me if I could help with their computers in the office.
Mm-hmm.
So that's when I got to see that pastor behind the curtain,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like I got to see who he really was, not during the showcase on Sunday.
Yeah.
And it felt so
Mm-hmm.
icky. I was like, yo, this dude is totally an actor. So
Mm-hmm.
at that stage, we started bouncing from church to church to
Okay.
church, right? We stayed kind of in the non-denominational vein,
Mm-hmm.
but not really. Um, and then at our next church, I butted heads with that pastor because um, he wanted me to become a member, but I couldn't become a member unless I agreed to be immersion baptized, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I said, well, in the creed that I was taught by rote memorization as a child, we believe in how
Mm.
many baptisms for the remission of sin? One. So yeah, so I don't see the point, right? I told him, and he
Mm.
said, and I said to this man point blank, Brady, I said, so if I don't agree to get immersion baptized, does that mean I can't come to your church anymore? He said, oh no, it just means you can't become a member. I'm like, okay.
Mm.
Like what is the point, right? It's like majoring in the minor. Like
Mm.
who cares? But they
Mm.
do. Like
Right.
they all do,
Mm.
right? And that from where I'm standing now, that extends far beyond Christianity. It's
Mm.
like all of the religions
Right.
like have like their little things that are just so stupid. Like, why are you holding on to this,
Right. It's
right?
cultic. You see how cultic it
Yeah,
is. This is what we
it
do
is.
here. And you can
Right,
go somewhere else and do it differently, but this is what we do here. How we
right,
prove that you're one of us.
right.
And then
Like, and for me, I just didn't see the value in being part of the membership. Like,
mhm.
what? So you can remind me of my tithes? I mean, I don't care, right?
Mm.
So then we eventually left there, and for whatever reason, we landed back at the Lutheran Church.
Mm.
And we kind of bounced around between the different. I told you in the beginning about the different, leanings of the Lutheran Church. So we bounced between different ones. Now we have moved to Central Florida, um, and I'm still on fire, and I still have that influence of that evangelical, very judgmental, like bigoted
Had you come
brand of
into contact with
Christianity.
cross movement yet or no?
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
Okay, let me go back to then.
Yeah.
So how that came about. So when we were doing the computer business, and I don't know how this guy got in contact with me. I don't know, but
Mm.
it was the man who owned the largest Christian bookstore in Fort Myers,
Mm.
Florida,
Okay.
right? And he was Pentecostal, and
Mm.
so he asked me to come out and meet with him about taking care of his network and his computers. And so he asked me if I would agree to be paid by store credit. And I'm like, hey, I'm all in because I can like buy gifts for all my religious family. Right? But like
Wow.
I could only buy like so many statues and
Right.
crosses, and you know what I mean, and books for different people. But I mean, like when I tell you I was all in, Brady, I was all in. Like the
Mm.
kids didn't watch anything but Bible Man, Veggie Tales.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't watch anything that wasn't like wholesome, and
Mm-hmm.
um, and all of my secular music of my youth was gone.
Mm-hmm.
So now here I am with this abundant store credit at
Mm.
this Christian bookstore. And so I've always been a hip hop head,
Mm.
like Grandmaster Flash, Furious Five,
Wow.
Sugar Hill Gang, Africa Bombata, Soul Sonic Force, Run DMC, LL Cool J, Curtis Blow. Like that's my childhood, right?
Okay.
And so like he had all of his music broke down by genre.
Mm.
What is this cross movement? Like I'm gonna
Mm.
check this out, right? And so
Mm.
and so the very first song that just like had me was When I Flow.
Okay.
And I was like, damn. I'm like, damn. I'm like, these boys can spit.
Okay.
So um
Mm.
so yeah, so that got me, and then, and since then, it's
Mm.
like I had so much store credit. Like I was buying everything with my store credit, right? So like the truth and
uh,
grits
mm.
and flame, like,
Mm.
and so that was all going off. And then so that's how I learned about you, right?
I'm just
And
curious, how did it
yeah.
impact your how did it impact your faith to see the faith fleshed out in a culture that you thought you had to leave behind?
Yeah, so like it's very problematic for me. Like that
Mm.
whole period of my
Okay.
life is very problematic because that wasn't the Christianity of my childhood, right?
Mm.
It
Wow.
was
How about
it
that?
was it was not. Like I could see, like
Mm.
as a kid, had I been into this evangelical Christianity, I could see them giving me a mandate to go save the souls of my classmates Monday through Friday, right?
Mm.
And that just wasn't like that for us. It was just like,
Interesting.
yeah, you go to church on Sunday and that's it. And in Lutheranism, you don't go to church on Sunday and Wednesday and
Mm.
select a little days. Like it's one day a week. That's it,
Mm.
right? Um, and it's a denomination that never preaches from the book of Revelation, never
Mm.
talks about the book of Revelation.
Mm.
There's no hellfire and brimstone, right?
Mm.
But then when I
Wow.
decide that I'm going all in, and I
Mm-hmm.
get mixed up with these different variations of that crazy,
Wow.
you're going to hell. And, you know, I'm learning words like backslidden, you know, like I had never heard that as a kid. Like, what is backsliding? Like, what
Mm.
is that? Like, you know, I never heard that.
Wow.
Now, that doesn't mean that I didn't know the scripture,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because other than the book of Revelation, you know, it's a very sound, it's a liturgy, you know, it's
Right.
very much like planned out, and you
Mm.
learn, you know. And then catechism
Mm.
is like they amp it up, like that's
Yeah.
before you can confirm yourself as a member, and that happens like around, it's very similar to the Catholics, although I think we're a little bit older, like maybe 12 or 13,
Okay.
like before we get first communion. And you
Okay.
know, and they do the real
Mm.
wine because
Mm.
they're like Catholics. So
Mm.
um so you know, for me, I'm learning all this stuff, and I can just see that had I grown up
Mm-hmm.
in that evangelical kind of vein,
Mm-hmm.
right, that I would have had a mandate to like
Mm-hmm.
save other people. So like,
Right.
I don't know if it's like Lutheranism is just like selfish or what, but like it's like we just didn't, like we didn't care. Like, you know,
Mm-hmm.
it was about you and your life, not about like
Mm.
everybody around you. But I did, like I picked that up. Like I
Okay.
picked it up from the non-denominational churches
Mm-hmm.
slash Baptist slash Pentecostal.
All right.
But you know, so I kind of picked up that vibe, and so that's where I was at. So I was very, in that stage of my life, I was very anti-culture. So what you guys were doing, and
Mm.
what all those other guys, you know, what all those other artists were doing, was like, it was right, that was all me, man. Like I'm right in that lane. Like I want to be anti-culture, right?
Mm.
Because the culture is the devil,
Well,
right?
no, but see, but I don't think we were anti-culture. We were counterculture,
Counterculture, right,
not
right, right,
anti-culture. So we
right,
didn't see culture as the devil. We saw sin as a problem that was corrupting culture. We wanted to
right,
redeem culture and, bring it back under the lordship of Jesus. Whereas I don't
right.
know who would be the people that would say we're trying to be, and like culture is of the devil. Like we wouldn't have said that.
Well, there was a whole clothing line called Not of This World, if you
Oh
remember.
yeah, yeah. Yeah.
So so for me it was all because my indoctrination was in a different
Gotcha.
version of Christianity. You
Mm-hmm.
guys were all the same to me.
Okay.
Like you saying it, like you explaining it to
Mm-hmm.
me, that's not how I felt that you
Right.
guys were, right?
Right. There
um
was no
and
nuance there. It was just
no, no
gotcha.
nuance for
Okay.
me.
Yeah.
For me, you guys are all like speaking out about the evils in the world, right? And
Wow.
so
Wow.
so you know, so like, but and it was all the same for me.
Mm-hmm.
So crazy. So another crazy part of this whole thing. So we were taking the kids when they were real young. We were taking them to Rock the Universe every year because hey, it's another Christian, you know, thing that's separated from the culture, and it's you know, it's hip hop and it's
Mm-hmm.
rock and it's like all these different, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't remember if it was the first or second year that we were there. We were staying in the Days Inn across the street from Universal Studios, and the band Pillar
Mm-hmm.
were our neighbors in the Days Inn. They had their bus, but at the time there was some big Christian music project where they were having contemporary Christian artists making covers of U2 songs,
Mm-hmm.
and Pillar did a cover for Sunday Bloody Sunday. So their lead singer Rob Beckley was in this, had to go to the studio to record vocals. So the rest of the band had to stay an extra day in Orlando,
Mm-hmm.
and they were next to us at the Days Inn. So I just started chopping it up with them.
Mm-hmm.
Next thing you know, I'm in the credits on two of their albums because they found out what I did for a living, and I helped design and maintain their website for their fan group Underground Army. So
Wow.
so crazy, right? For this little Lutheran kid from West Virginia, like it was just, so it
Right.
was crazy.
Hmm.
And so so there was that. So you know, I'm still on fire, and now you know, now we're going to a Lutheran church
Hmm.
again. We moved to Central Florida. I'm still on fire. I'm still controlling my children's lives and what they're exposed to.
As a Lutheran, were you sticking out like a sore thumb, being on fire?
I did because the first because the bigotedness of evangelical Christianity
Hmm.
rubbed off on me so bad. And
Hmm.
the first Lutheran church that we went to in Central Florida was the liberal, the ELCA.
Mm.
And they had their music director was an open homosexual.
Mm.
There were a lot of homosexuals in the congregation, and the damage that was done to me from
Mm.
my exposure to evangelical, I was
Wow.
still I was still very judgy.
Can you give any examples?
I was just uncomfortable,
Okay.
right? And like I didn't voice it to
Mm.
like the congregation, but like I told Lori, I'm like, yeah, I'm not comfortable, right? Like I'm
Mm.
not like it's awkward for me. Now,
Mm.
here's another thing you need to know. There's five siblings in my family. I'm number two out of the five. My two youngest sisters, who are twins, are lesbians.
Mm.
Um,
Wow.
and and they came out a while ago, like
Mm-hmm.
even before we started attending that church.
Mm.
And I fought them.
Mm.
I resisted them. This is the influence that this evangelical Christianity did to me, bro. Like I fought them, and
Wow.
so like
Wow.
when you were talking about not too long ago when you attended the wedding,
Mm-hmm.
I, bro,
Mm-hmm.
I was feeling you because I lived
Mm.
that for probably a good 10, 15 years of my life. I picked up that bigotry and
Mm.
that and so it was a very
Yeah.
uncomfortable place. And then but and I used the stupid bumper sticker cliche Christian thing.
God
Love
made
the
Adam and Eve.
sinner,
Oh,
hate
okay.
no, love the sinner, hate the sin,
Mm-hmm.
right? That like that's how I justified loving my sisters.
Mm.
My sisters, bro, who I basically raised them because
Mm-hmm.
they're 10 years younger than me. So
Mm-hmm.
but that's what I justified, like, okay, I can have a relationship with them because they can't help it, right?
Mm.
And now I'm so like, I know we're going to get to the deconverted part, but I'm so liberated in
Mm-hmm.
my mind, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm.
Um, it's like that line from Bob Marley, like emancipate yourselves from mental slavery, right? Like
Mm.
like that's me, bro. Like that's where
Okay.
I'm at now. And I love my sisters because
Mm.
I love my sisters.
Right.
There's no other reason. Like
Yeah.
that's it,
Mm.
right? And
Mm.
and so but
Wow.
it was a tough time, man. Like it
Okay.
really did a number on me.
Mm.
So then we went from the frying pan to the fire
Okay.
because we went from the liberal Lutheran church
Mm-hmm.
to a conservative to basically the MAGA version of the Lutheran church
And did you seek that out because you thought you'd be more comfortable there in light of your judginess?
because I knew that no.
Okay.
Well, yeah, maybe, but
Mm.
there was a bigger reason, and um, it's totally superficial.
Okay.
Um, the church was at the end of our subdivision.
Okay. Gotcha.
Like if one of our multiple cars was not running,
Hmm.
um, we could walk there.
Okay.
Um, and then also we wanted to get our sons, so we homeschooled our son. Again, this is that counterculture thing. We
Hmm.
homeschooled our sons
Mm.
using Bob Jones University as the freaking curriculum. So I mean, bro, we had it bad, right? Um,
Mm,
so
mm,
we
mm.
homeschooled them, and then we wanted to put them in a Christian school. So that right wing Lutheran church,
Mhm.
um, that was at the end of our subdivision, within walking distance of where we lived, also had a Christian school.
Mm.
So that's how we got into that church.
Gotcha.
But things ran afoul, and the deconversion started
Mm.
in 2015, 2016 when Donald Trump came on
Wow.
the scene. So
Really?
yes, 100%. Like for me, like the whole Donald Trump phenomena,
Hmm.
like not only changed me politically
Hmm.
because I was raised Republican as well.
Hmm.
Um, not only changed me politically, but changed me religiously
Mm.
because that's what got me to start like really exploring other options. Like really,
Mm.
and for me, I started off like I realized that I had a problem, right? So I'm like I need to wean myself off of this right wing crazy like
Hmm.
Christianity. So I started reading people like Robin Meyer, um, Bishop Spong, John Shelby Spong. Marcus Borg,
Mm.
Bart Ehrman. I started reading these guys, right? Because for me, and I think I told you this before, I was trying to save my faith,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because
So let's
my
let's
big,
let's
yeah,
help somebody with this. Like, what
yeah,
was it that made you say, I need to do some research? I know you said when Trump came on the scene and all that, but like, can you give any specifics in terms of what made you say, wait, I need to back up off this a little bit?
yeah. So we had a lot of personal conflict at that church. Now,
Mm,
you need to know that I have been a church council member at two separate churches, and at that particular church, the last one, I was an elder. Um, and the the senior pastor loved Donald Trump.
mm,
And so it was a constant argument
mm,
about, because for me, I just saw such hypocrisy in
mm,
the same exact people that were so pissed off about Bill Clinton's blowjob
mm.
had no problem with Donald Trump,
Right.
right? And I'm like, but then it just got worse with all of these well-known Christians like laying hands on him and praying on
Mm.
him, and I'm just like,
Why
and
couldn't you
all my
buy that God might just be using him, raising this king up for his own purpose?
because the when I ask the same question of people, if God is powerful enough to make Donald Trump
Mm,
be usable, is he not also powerful enough to make Hillary Clinton usable?
mm.
And they don't have an answer for that, right? So this is when you
Mm,
start to poke holes because they're so
mm.
entrenched.
Yeah.
They're so entrenched and they hold on. They just like hold on for dear life, and like
Hmm.
so any kind of reason or logic just like offends them,
Gotcha.
which you see on a daily basis on your
Hmm.
Facebook page. Um, so that was really for me was the beginning, and I wasn't like throwing out the baby with the bathwater. I mean, we did stop going to that church,
Hmm.
um,
Your kids were
because
going to the
that
school,
they were they were
so
they
you stopped
were
going to the church. Do your kids stop going to the school or no?
they did, yeah.
Okay.
The very
Okay.
following year,
Hmm.
once we had become liberated in our minds, we put
Mm.
them in public. They went to public high school,
Okay.
right? um, but the other thing that really threw me was this same senior pastor. I was there on a Saturday, so they brought in a new associate pastor. Um, he was a really cool guy. Like
Mm.
he was totally like a sore thumb in that church because he was
Mm.
left leaning. I know from my personal conversations with him. So I was there on a Saturday running some wiring for them. I always like I don't know, I get roped into helping. Um, but I
Mm.
was running some wiring for them. So I'm up in the attic, right?
Mm.
So the new associate pastor is there. He knows I'm up in the attic. He also has a man who is doing community service, working outside, cleaning up the parking lot and stuff like that. So I'm up in the attic. The senior pastor comes in and rips the associate pastor a new a-hole
Mm.
because he doesn't realize I'm up there.
Mm.
And I'm hearing the whole thing, Brady. And I'm just over there like,
Mm.
and why was he ripping him a new one? Because he didn't think it was a good idea to have this convict that's
Mm.
doing community service seeing their big screen TVs that are in the sanctuary. I said, bro, I gotta go. I
Mm.
can't be, I can't, I can't be a part of this. Like I can't. No,
Okay.
that's a
Mm.
100% true story, bro.
Mm.
So, so we shortly after left the church, and then I'm exploring
Mm.
liberal theologians, right, trying to save the faith.
Now hold
And
on. You gotta connect that for me because why does embracing Donald Trump
yeah,
make you say I need liberal theologians? Because you could be you could be socially and politically liberal without being theologically liberal.
but
Why do
it's
you start?
rarely
Okay.
but it's rarely the case. It's rarely
Okay.
the case. I mean, we all know about the religious right.
Mm.
We all know that they are a very powerful force in getting candidates elected or Supreme Court justices on the
Gotcha.
bench. So we know
Mm.
that it's a force. And so what I was seeing that I was surrounded with
Mm-hmm.
were those people, right? So the night that Donald Trump won the Republican nomination,
Mm-hmm.
that night, Lori and I both both registered Republicans for many years. We both changed our party affiliation to non-party affiliated or independent, and we're now proudly registered Democrats. But I could see that I was surrounded with the religious right. Okay, and so and the hypocrisy was just so astonishing. So rather than just say, F this, I don't want to be a Christian anymore, for me, because it was such a part of my identity from basically since I opened my eyes, I wanted to save it. I really wanted to save it. And I think I told you that, I'm reading all these books, but the one book that threw me was a book that my father-in-law gave me, called God, A Human History by Reza Aslan.
Yeah.
And just I saw things for the first time. Like, even though I grew up in the church and surrounded by Christianity, I started seeing things for the first time. Now, admittedly, apparently I got a different conclusion out of the book than my father-in-law, but my conclusion was mine, right? And I owned it. I owned it. I got to the point in my life at 50 years old that I said, this is all bullshit. This was all fabricated bullshit. And it goes the same. I'm not just attacking Christianity. It's all. And once you break down and you understand our evolution as a species, if you don't understand that, it's like taking a Bible passage out of context. You have to know what's going on around that passage. That, Christians just love to throw things out. Well, that's not what they were talking about, right? So I think it's true also that we need to understand the evolution of our species,
put
to
us
understand,
in context.
right? Why did we create? Why did we fabricate gods, right?
Okay.
And it's like, I've seen the meme that says, at first the gods lived in the mountains, and then we climbed the mountains and there were no gods. Then the gods lived in the sky, and then we made it to the sky, and there were no gods, right? Because there's never going to be any gods, because we created them.
Yeah.
And one of the things that book like really showed me is that if you look through all, not just the religions, but mythologies, like going way back before Judaism, you'll always notice that the gods always have human characteristics, right? They eat, they drink, they have sex, they sometimes have sex with mortals. Like, it's all the same, it's all connected. And it's like, this is a fabrication of the human mind.
So when your stepfather gave you the book, you said you reached a different conclusion. Was he thinking this was going to make you see the Christian God as penultimate, or just as some kind of like it was all leading to the Christian God? Like, what did he think was going to happen when you read it?
I don't know what he thought, but so that's interesting too, because when Lori and I first started dating, it's not my stepfather, my father-in-law. It's Lori's dad. Yeah. So when Lori and I first started dating, he was an atheist, or at a minimum, he was an agnostic, because he admonished me one time about Christianity. And he said, we're not going to talk about it. And I'm like, okay. But then, so my oldest son is 20. So 20 years ago, he had to have emergency quadruple bypass surgery. And when he was under, he saw a light and had a revelation. And when he came to, when he was recovering, I was the first person he wanted to talk to. Right? Like, there was a pastor that my mother-in-law had brought in. But then he wanted to talk to me. And so, he and I just started like chopping it up about Bible stuff. Like this, it was all so weird to me. So as he's coming into the faith, and so he dove in like full head on into a Methodist church, right? And he was volunteering and doing all of this. But then he started to get disillusioned. So today he is a Unitarian.
Okay.
Unitarian. Like, I think, yeah.
All
they go to
lead to the same God, or something like
everybody.
that.
They got Muslims and Buddhists, like everybody's okay. So that's what they are. So that's the conclusion that he came to.
Okay.
But for me, for me, I came to a completely different conclusion because for me, it's all
Mm-hmm.
right there.
Yeah.
It's all there in black and white.
Yeah.
Like if we created all of these myths,
Mm-hmm.
then they're all not true.
Right.
They're no, they're no more true than Santa Claus, the Easter Bunny, Bigfoot, unicorns, leprechauns, fairies, all of
Mm-hmm.
the Harry Potter. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, all of the things that our imaginations come up with, they're not
Right.
true. And so for me, I'm just like, yeah,
Hmm. So let me ask you this then. Go back to you guys are 1 year married, you experienced
yep,
the miscarriage, you think God is basically saying, why should I do anything for you? You haven't done anything for me. You begin to give this God your life.
yep.
Um, this may be a weird question. I don't know if the Lutheranism makes this a weird question or not, but that conversation that you believe you have with God when he's, trying to get you to play for his team or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
did it produce in you a not just okay, I'm going to serve you now, but a love for God? Was it relational, or was it more like if somebody would have come to you and say, "Oh, you have religion, not a relationship with God"? Would you say, "Yeah, you're probably right," or would you say, "No, it was relational"?
It's not relational. I mean, it didn't feel relational at the time, and
Mm-hmm.
now because of the material that I have read,
Mm-hmm.
you start to like as you come out,
Mm-hmm.
right, as you're deconverting and as you come out and you're standing, three
Right.
thousand foot view,
Right. Right.
you
Right.
start to you start to see some things, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't remember which author it was, but they put it so beautifully about how if you look at all of the different religions
Mm-hmm.
and how the symbolism is basically equivalent to bondage, like praying hands,
Mm-hmm.
you know, prostate,
Mm-hmm.
kneeling. It's all like, and I think that's looking back, I think that's how I felt.
Well, no,
I
I
felt
get.
I felt like God was displeased with his
Mm,
not so loyal servants.
okay. So
Not like, hey,
let me just
buddy.
let me just be clear. Looking
Yeah,
back, I can see how you could see it that way for sure. I guess I'm trying to get you to while you were in it, let's say
yeah,
2012, 2010.
yeah.
How did it feel relational to you at that point?
No, I don't think it ever did, Brady.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, cool.
If you know how
Mm,
it felt obligatory,
wow.
obligatory, like like
Mm-hmm.
like it was contractual. You know what I
Mm,
mean? Like because I was raised up in the
got you.
belief,
Got you.
so I felt obligated. Like this was my punishment for
Mm. Well,
backsliding. I guess I didn't know that's what it was at the
right.
time, but
I want to speak to the person that's ready to say, and if you don't want to speak to this, you don't have to. Jay Witt does this all the time. I try to put him on the spot. He says,
yeah.
I'm not even going to entertain that. But to the person that would say to you, oh, well, see, then that's the issue. You were never saved. You never had a relationship. You had a contract with God,
Hmm.
not a relationship. You were never saved. Would you give that person that? Or would you say, is it worth saying to that person, whatever the saved experience is, I had my version of it? Or would you give them, maybe you're right, maybe I never had the saved experience?
I don't know because I guess it depends on the translation
Mm,
of the Bible, but I mean, my understanding and how I was raised with the sacraments and the covenants. A
mm.
covenant is actually a contract. So I mean, it's like from from the
Right.
get go, it's contractual
Mm,
if you think about it, right?
right.
And it's like, and so like in evangelical Christianity, like there's supposed to be like this feeling of like
Mm,
joy and everything because you're so lucky to have been saved, right?
mm,
But for me, I guess the way I was brought up is that it's always been contractual. Like that
mm,
covenant is a contract between God and his children.
mm-hmm. All right, well then let's do this then. I'm glad we went that far. But part of the contract that the New Testament people, the
Yeah,
people of God, have with God is the covenant is in Christ. God has a covenant with Christ, and those who are in Christ experience the benefits of that covenant. And to be in Christ, what it takes is you having, and this is the qualifier, saving faith in
right.
Christ's work on the cross.
Right.
whether it ever felt relational or not, would you say, well, I at least had that? I was trusting Jesus' work on the cross as what got me into this covenant with God in the first place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would definitely say I would have that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I remember like when I remember in that period when I was on fire,
Mm-hmm.
that I learned something that was never explained to me, and that was I never understood the connection between Jesus being the Lamb of God
Mm-hmm.
and what that meant in context to the Old Testament. Like that was something that was never taught to me
Mm-hmm.
as just a, everyday run of the mill, go to church guy,
Mm-hmm.
not like not like you and others that like went to Bible college or whatever. But for me, like that was never explained. So yeah, I did feel like, I was partaking through the sacrament
Mm-hmm.
in that benefit, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I don't ever feel, honestly, Brady, I don't ever feel like I had a relationship. Not
I get it.
if there was a relationship, it
Mm-hmm.
was definitely one way, right? Which are not the
Okay.
best relationships,
Right.
right? It's
Yeah.
like, it's like I tell my kids, like, if I have to tell you to tell me that you love me,
Mm.
don't even tell me, right? Right?
Right. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
like that, I mean that's got to be a bumper sticker. But
Mm.
yeah, so
Yeah, I get it. And I used to spend a lot of time trying to make people flash their badge to prove they were ever really in.
yeah,
Now I don't give a fuck anymore. I'm just like, yo,
right,
your
yep,
experience is your experience. And if you could come that close for that long to this
yeah,
God and he not
yeah,
make it relational, like he not get into your heart or do the thing that would make
yeah,
a Christian say, okay, now you really were saved. If you can be that close for that long and God not do the thing to save you, it's not your fault.
yeah.
It's
No,
it's
that's right.
you know what I mean? Like God is the one
That's right.
who's supposedly drawing and sealing and saving and all that kind of whatever.
Bullshit, right?
Right. So I'm
Well,
no longer going
not
to browbeat
not
somebody
only
about what experience you had or didn't have.
not only that, Brady, but they all, they always say, omniscient and omnipotent. It's
Right.
like, okay, so this should be easy for them,
Right. Right.
right? But like they're not doing it.
Right.
So
Yeah. Yeah. So you start reading liberal theologians, you get a hold of Reza Aslan's book, and you say, damn, it's all mythology, it's too similar for me to say that
yeah,
this one religion is going to be different than the rest of them.
right.
Um, I probably should do a whole interview with Lori now because I'm asking you to speak for her, but I would love to hear her story. But was
She actually just came into the room. So
hey, hey, hey.
Brady said, hey,
uh, was she as all in as you were?
she was, I mean, she might answer that differently, but she was definitely going along.
Okay,
I don't know that she was. No, she was definitely going along to get along at a minimum.
like
Like
at a minimum.
yeah, because like we there was never any arguments about
Mm-hmm.
going to church or anything like that. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
when something bad would arise and it was time for us to move on to a different church, yeah, of course. But
Mm-hmm.
we both felt the same way, right? There was never any disagreement in that
Okay,
regard. So, um, but yeah, I think the best way to describe Lori's religiosity is that she was going along to get along.
okay.
I don't think she ever truly believed it.
So when you get to the point where you say it's all bullshit,
Yeah.
what was the road to what was the conversation like,
Yeah.
and what was it like getting her to agree?
Well, she already agreed. Like
Okay.
when I came to that conclusion, it's like
Mm-hmm.
she was there waiting for me, to be honest.
Wow.
Right.
Okay.
Now she hasn't gone, like, I don't think she's gone as far into it as I have. Like,
Mm-hmm.
like just like how I shared resources with you when you were
Mm-hmm.
first,
Mm-hmm.
coming out. I've shared resources with her because, I've gone far off of the liberal theologians. Like,
Mm-hmm.
like I've read several Sam Harris books and Christopher Hitchens and
Mm-hmm.
Richard Dawkins and Dan Barker. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
so like I'm all in a
Mm-hmm.
different direction now, right? Like, and I guess for
You're all
for
out.
me, it's yeah, I'm all out.
uh,
But I guess for me, it's just like, like why do I
mm,
continue to watch the podcast and why do I
mm.
I don't know if it's reaffirming for me or if it's, I really like the
I
shows
get it.
like the Call In,
Mm-hmm.
because I love to hear theists call in,
Mm-hmm.
and just knowing that they're going to get roasted. I don't know why that brings me pleasure. I don't know why it brings me pleasure, but honestly, it's like, like I enjoy it. So, but yeah, I love skepticism. I mean,
Mm,
I love where I'm at now. I like to refer to myself more so as a free thinker.
yeah.
Um, I like that word. I
Okay.
like that nomenclature for
Mm,
what I am. You know what I mean?
yeah. Did you experience any, uh, even if not postpartum depression, what was the emotional shift from being all in, and then
Mhm.
when you're starting to get out, so you're seeking out these liberal theologians because you're trying to save your faith, then you get to the point where you realize it's all bullshit. Was it relief? Was it regret? Was it like, what was the emotional accompaniment of that kind of life shift?
So I can tell you the one big struggle I had. I'm not
Mm,
gonna lie. And this is a testament to the power
mm,
of the indoctrination.
yeah.
But my one big hang up, the thing that I did not want to let go of, is the eternal life aspect. And
Mm,
more specifically, because I didn't really give a shit about my eternal life, right?
mm,
Um, but more specifically, seeing like my grandparents again or seeing
mm,
your loved ones again, right? For me to wrap my brain around the fact that I'm
yeah.
never going to see them again, like they're
Mm,
dead.
mm,
And so, so Lori and I were talking about it, and we think that eternal life is possible,
mm,
and we think that the Mexicans have it right,
mm,
okay? Because the Day of the Dead that they celebrate, when they
mm,
put their relative's picture on the ofrenda,
mm,
that's how you live forever. You
mm,
live forever in the memories and the stories of your offspring.
mm,
That's how you live forever. So I think that's the only way that everlasting life could
mm.
actually be a thing.
Got you.
Um, Outside of that, I think where I'm at now is I,
Mm,
I just think we're carbon based
mm,
creatures that, we're going to rot or
yeah.
burn,
Okay.
whatever, you know,
Mm,
and that's it. And that's the end of it. Like when you're gone, you're gone. Your
mm,
brain turns off. You
mm.
know what I mean? And I've had theists tell me oh, aren't you afraid of dying? And I'm like, no, why would I be afraid? Like
Mm.
I don't remember how it was before I was born.
Right. It'll be like
I,
that.
it'll be like that. Like,
Right.
it's like I don't have like a traumatic memory of before I was born. Like
Mm,
it was like horrible. So I mean, yeah,
mm.
but that's just where I'm at.
Yeah.
So, but
So that was 2015, 2016,
yeah,
the
yeah,
deconversion.
that's when it started. Yep.
Was there a period of deconstructing, or do you feel like you're still deconstructing, or did you just let it all go?
I let it go.
Okay.
Yeah, like I got to a point where I'm just like, yeah, I'm not.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's like one of those situations where like if you're confident that one aspect is not true,
Mm-hmm.
then you can confidently believe that none of the rest of it is true,
Yeah. That was
right?
me.
And that, yeah, and
I
that's
pulled the thread
that's
and the whole thing came apart.
okay. Yeah, like where's my
Yeah.
sweater?
Right. Exactly.
It's like
Exactly.
whoa, but yeah. So
Hmm. Wow.
yeah,
I think it was you guys that said this online one time. You said that your kids actually got there before you. Was that you guys or somebody else?
yes,
That was
no, it was
you.
us.
Can you talk
It was
about
our
that real quick?
Yeah, it was our youngest, and it was while they were going to that Christian school. Our
Mm,
youngest, who's now 19,
mm,
he just came to us one day and he said, "I'm an atheist. I don't
mm.
believe any of this."
How old was
And
he at the time?
I think he was 14 or 15.
Mm.
Oh, Lori's correcting me. He was 12.
He was 12.
He was 12,
And this is while you
and
were all in.
oh yeah, we were all in still, and you know the pastor wanted to meet with him, and it was just all this shit. So yeah, but yeah, and since I've deconverted,
Mm,
I've apologized to both of my children, and I said,
mm,
I'm really, because now looking back, I feel like the Veggie Tales and the Bible Man and all that bullshit that I was getting from the
Mm.
Christian bookstore was actually detrimental to them. And
Mm.
I've stated before, like in
Mm.
some of the chats on your videos, um, I feel like even my indoctrination uh, was abusive, because
Mm.
I would have much preferred if they would have said, "This is what these people believe, and this is
Right.
what these people believe." And you get to choose. That's the
Right.
beautiful thing about the
Mm.
human life, is
Mm.
that you get to choose. But
Mm.
instead, it's like, pounding it into
Mm-hmm.
your head, like,
Wow.
like, get dressed up. You're going to church, like,
Mm.
and that's the last thing that a kid wants to do. I mean,
Mm.
honestly, you want to play with your Hot Wheels, and they're like,
Right.
get your church clothes on. So, it's like,
Mm.
but so, I mean, I feel like in that regard,
Yeah.
that's a regret that I have, that, I gave 50 years of my life
Mm.
to what I now think is a false belief.
Yeah.
So
Uh, what was it that convinced your youngest that he couldn't believe? Was it anything specific that made him say?
I don't know. I'd have to
Okay.
talk. I mean, we didn't talk about it at the time, because at the
Really?
time at the time it was probably demonic possession. Um, but I mean, so we didn't talk about it at the time, like
Mm.
asking him for specific examples. But I'd love to talk to him now.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah.
so but and we do talk now. We do
Mm-hmm.
talk about his beliefs and my beliefs, and his mom's beliefs, and how
Mm-hmm.
they're all aligned. So
Mm-hmm.
you know,
You don't have to speak about this if you don't want to, but what about your other kids? Like, were they? Was it like when you
I
guys
don't
came
know.
out as okay?
Yeah, I don't know.
They might still be
Well,
believers.
uh, the one that I reconnected with,
Mm-hmm.
um, I know that he was working for a Christian organization.
Mm-hmm.
Um, he's not now.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty sure his in-laws are like uber mega religious though. But at the same time, um, I know that um, he's been talking to me about Rob Bell. So
Okay.
that's not a right wing guy.
Yeah, very
Um,
progressive.
yeah, he's a
Mm-hmm.
progressive Christian. So I mean, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, I don't talk to him as often as I would like,
Mm-hmm.
because we went so many years without talking to each other.
Yeah.
I'm just like, I'm not going to push him. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? Like I'll reach out to him every once in a while, but for the
Mm-hmm.
most part, it's just like I don't want to force myself
Yeah,
on him.
I got you.
You know,
I got you.
that whole situation was a bad situation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Um, so now you've been going on 6 years,
Yeah,
6 years, life after faith. Uh, if someone were to say to you, without God, there's no life has no purpose, what do you say?
yeah, that's ridiculous.
Mm.
Like your purpose is. I mean, I kind of already covered that, and that is, if you really want like a long life, is
Mm.
to create those memories
Mm.
in those around you. It doesn't necessarily have to be your children, but
Mm.
like family members that will survive you,
Mm.
like nieces and nephews or whatever, like let them tell the stories, right?
Mm.
Like that's how you can live on. But
Mm.
outside of that, I don't know, like to say that life has no purpose, I think that's ridiculous. Like I,
Mm.
I think that I think that our purpose is whatever we make it,
Gotcha.
honestly. Like we don't need the influence of an invisible sky daddy to
Mm.
have a purpose, right? Like
Mm.
right now, my purpose is just chilling.
Mm.
Like that's my purpose,
Living the
right?
semi-retired life, huh?
Yeah, I don't care. Like I'm not
Yeah.
trying to I mean, I'm not trying to change the world,
Mm-hmm.
I'm just living my life. And I think that's
Yeah.
true for most people. So,
Yeah. Well, you talk about what the evangelical worldview does to people and how much of a missionary, people like Cross Movement were when you heard us, you're like, man, these guys are on mission and all that.
yeah,
Um, Deconverting, I tell you, I know for me, it was like going on permanent vacation because I was
yeah,
working so hard. I was always doing something for the
yeah,
sake of winning some soul or getting someone to look God's way or whatever. And I always had this mandate on me.
yeah,
And it was almost like upon deconversion, like whatever rest Jesus is talking about giving the people, I'm like, yeah, this is like an early retirement because I'm resting now. Like I don't have to spend the
Yeah.
rest of my life
Yeah.
working that hard for some,
Yeah.
I don't want to say taskmaster in the sky, but like
Yeah.
just the relief of not having
Yeah.
to I know it's interesting. You talk about that, the praying and the kneeling and the bowing and the servitude,
Yeah.
to not have that anymore, to be a
Yeah.
free thinker and a free liver. It's
That's right.
liberating. It's
It is
liberating.
so liberating.
Yeah.
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 But so I'd like to share with you the very interesting story,
Mm,
because I feel like this story, um, it goes so well
mm,
into, I don't think this story would have happened were it
mm.
not for my skeptical thinking,
Okay.
right? So you kind of already know a little bit of it, but
Mm,
I'm gonna give you the details, right?
okay.
So our mutual friend Henry Red
Mm.
Cloud, he had posted
The
this
former
is
Christian rapper, Red Cloud.
that's right.
Gotcha.
Um, he had posted this was back in May,
Mm,
right? So it's coincidence. The big coincidence in all of this is that this was about the time that you were perpetrating the Jesus dog myth. Okay, um, when
how dare
when
you call
I
it a myth?
when I became aware
Mm,
of a long running family myth. Okay,
mm,
so Henry had shared something about Leonardo DiCaprio's new joint called Killing of the Flower Moon, right?
mm-hmm.
Um,
Which I can't wait to go
now,
see.
right.
Mm,
Uh, I was getting ready to respond to him because so through my entire life, I was told that my family had Native American descent,
mm,
right? Through my great grandmother. And my great grandmother, like, she was an icon, bro. Like, she was huge. She was really tall. She
mm,
had high cheekbones. We all just believed it, right?
mm,
So I'm getting ready to fire off a reply to Henry. But the reason, so two things stop me. One, I'm a skeptical thinker now.
mm,
And two, every time I've ever shared with somebody in my life
mm,
that I'm of Native American descent, they say, "What tribe?" And I
mm.
don't know the answer to that. Like that's not part of what's been handed down, right?
Gotcha.
So so I know that my great grandmother's maiden name was Mozingo,
Mm,
right? So I decide to Google search Mozingo surname origin. That's it. That's all I put in.
mm,
The first thing that came up said Kimbundu, a language of the Bantu people from
mm,
West Central Africa.
mm.
So I look at my skin and I'm like,
Hmm,
I don't think that's right.
mm,
So then, so I kept digging some more, right? And I come across this author. His name is Joe Mozingo. He is an award-winning journalist, works for the LA Times, um, blonde hair, blue-eyed,
mm,
Joe Mozingo. And he wrote a book back in 2012 called Fiddler on Pantico Run,
mm,
um, uh, African Warrior, His White Descendants, A Search for Family.
mm.
Now, now I'm intrigued, right? I'm like, what? So,
Mm,
so obviously I buy the book and
mm,
I'm reading the book. So this guy, so in his branch of the family, the story was Mozingo was Italian, right? In my branch of the family, it's Native American.
mm,
So I buy the book. But in addition to buying the book, I joined a Facebook group called Mozingo Family Trees,
mm,
right? And which of course, they had the screening questions, how are you related? And
mm,
so I put my great grandmother, Jessie Mae Mozingo, blah, blah, blah. So they let me in the group. They're like, welcome, Scott. We believe that this is your branch of the tree.
mm,
So I click on it and it's a link. And sure enough, it's this long line. Like I recognize some of the names.
mm,
Um, so then I'm reading this book and I'm learning more information. So what I find out is that my ninth great grandfather, his name was Edward Mozingo,
mm,
was a slave
mm,
brought to Virginia Now, it's fuzzy to how old he was when he was born. We know when he died,
Mm-hmm.
but more importantly, enshrined in parchment paper was when he went before the Council of Virginia in the year 1672 and won his freedom.
Mm.
Now, now the fact that this survived, the fact that it even happened,
Mm.
is amazing. So I guess in the 1600s, the Africans weren't called slaves; they
Mm.
were called servants, indentured servants, right?
Yeah.
So Edward at some point became an indentured servant of Colonel John Walker, who was the Burgess of Warwick. So he's a big dude, like he's a big important guy, right?
Mm.
He's got a lot of land. So John Walker dies at some point. Well, like I think it's like 1669 or something like that. He dies. So his widow inherits Edward.
Mm.
She gets remarried. So John Walker's daughters from his first marriage, not from this widow, from his first marriage, are good friends with Edward. And they convince him to go to Jamestown because Jamestown was the capital of Virginia until
Mm.
1699. So if you had to go to court or anything like that, you had to travel to Jamestown. They convinced him to go to Jamestown and appeal for his freedom,
Mm.
which he was awarded because John Walker's daughters testified on his behalf. And so, I'm learning all of this and like
Mm.
my mind is just blown. So so I'm looking through the family tree and sure enough,
Mm.
my mom and my great grandmother are the only two females in the line all the way back to Edward. So
Wow.
my family is of African descent.
Mm.
Um, and just like learning that. And then, I also learned some other things like the fact that Mozingo is one of two names that survived the Middle Passage and
Mm.
chattel slavery, right? And there's a lot of theories as to why, but they think it's related to Queen Nzinga. They think that Mozingo is, so it's possible that he was either noble
Mm.
or possibly royal, but from the Kingdom of Congo. And so, and ironically, the populations that the spots in the world that have the most occurrences of the name Mozingo, the
Mm.
United States and Cameroon.
Mm.
So I'm like, it's crazy. And
So have you
now
done your DNA?
I cannot. I mean, I have not, but it
Mm.
would not prove it because there's two females. So in order for them
Mm.
to go back that far, it
Wow.
needs to be father to son. It needs to be paternal.
Wow.
But so interesting. So I did a little bit more digging, and the
Mm.
family myth about the Native American is actually about my fourth great grandfather. His name
Mm.
was Robert. Um, so that's already been debunked,
Mm.
right? Because some of his other descendants, father to son, have
Mm.
already done the DNA and they are linked directly back to Edward, right?
Mm.
So because of my mother and my great grandmother prevents me from
Okay.
being able to be linked. That's called Y-DNA.
Mm.
Um, so I'm learning all of this in the
Yeah, yeah.
family tree group, but
Mm-hmm.
um, but the myth has been disproven by
Mm.
DNA, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so now I have access to all of these records. Like
Mm.
they didn't keep a lot of records. But here's something like what I'm about to tell you, Brady, like you're probably going to be like, why don't you believe in God, right? Because if I was still believing in
Mm-hmm.
God, like this would be a God thing. And I'm sure that some of your viewers that watch this are going to say this is a God thing, right? Okay. So Edward gets his freedom in Jamestown in 1672. He then goes back uh, to the northern neck of Virginia,
Mm. Wow.
where Lori and I bought a house not knowing any of this.
Mm.
And he marries a white woman,
Mm.
Margaret Bailey, and they become one of the first documented, not first, but
Mm.
definitely first documented mixed race families,
Mm.
right? And so they had three sons. One died like in childhood. And then John, their one son John is who I'm descended from, and then Edward. And so John also married a white woman, so another mixed race. And so
Mm.
that's
Mm-hmm.
right. Um, but Edward married a black woman. And so I have cousins, distant cousins that I'm
Mm.
now friends with on Facebook, and they're awesome. And we all agree that our family history needs to be untwisted.
Yeah.
Um, but so it's really, really cool. It's been a cool experience for me.
Yeah.
But the fact that like this all happened literally like 20 miles down the road from where we bought this house in
Mm.
the 16, so he was
Wow.
freed on October 5th, 1672. So
Mm.
we just celebrated the 351st celebration of his freedom.
Mm.
And I'm just like, it's crazy to me. It's crazy. But what I was going to say is that, at some point in the colony's history, they started keeping tax records, right?
Mm.
They started census and tax records. So when I found out that I had been lied to, right?
Mm.
And they're all adding up now, Brady. Okay. I mean, we can go Tooth Fairy, we can go Santa Claus, we can go Easter Bunny, we
Mm.
can go Jesus,
Mm.
and now I can go Native American, right? Like I've been lied to. So at first I was pissed.
Mhm.
I was like, why would they do that? It
Mm.
pisses me off. But then again, context,
Mhm.
right? So Edward was a Negro man.
Mm.
He was free by a court order. If he did not walk around with that piece of paper in his pocket everywhere he went
Mm.
in Virginia, right, during
Mhm.
his life, it would have been bad. And
Mhm.
so, the what Joe talks about in his book is that probably by his grandchildren, they were passing for white.
Mhm.
Okay. Sadly, by great grandchildren, they were owning other humans.
Mm.
Okay. So what I think happened with my fourth great grandfather, because it's also kind of cool to like see where everybody's born and where they die, so you can
Mhm.
kind of like follow their migration from Jamestown to Gloucester to the Northern Neck, then to like Culpeper, Virginia. So here's the interesting thing. So my fourth great grandfather, Robert, was the first one in modern day West Virginia.
Mm.
It was Ohio County, Virginia then, but because of the Civil War, West Virginia became a state. So he's
Mm.
the first one. He's the first one, and this all happened like around that time frame. He's the first one in West Virginia. He had a brother named Benjamin who went to Pennsylvania. I find it strange when I'm looking at these historical records of census and tax records that their father, Benjamin Sr., owned slaves.
Mm.
Robert did not, went to West Virginia. Benjamin Jr. did not,
Mm.
went to Pennsylvania. I think what really happened was that there was a rift in the family, and they
Mm.
tried to distance themselves from the Mosaicos of Virginia, which
Mm.
owned slaves, right? So, but it's just fascinating to me. And I told Lori, I said the real story
Mm.
is so much more interesting. It's so much more
It
more
always
interesting than
is.
you're from some mystery Native American tribe, right?
Mhm.
Um, but the fact that like this all happened like 20 miles from where we're living now,
Yeah.
I'm back in my ancestral
Wow.
ground.
How about
You know what
that?
I mean?
Mm.
Like it's crazy. And like, this man that Edward worked for, he literally had like thousands of acres, like all
Mm.
over the state of Virginia. So,
Wow.
but yeah, like learning that was just like,
Yeah. And here's the lesson that for you at home, kids.
right.
All this stemmed from his skepticism. Had he not developed a skeptical mind about things, he would have just gone on repeating what he's always heard. But then, like you said, the real story is much more interesting. And that's why, if you ever ask yourself, why do people who deconvert, why do they still talk about the Bible so much? Why do they still talk about Israel's history? Why do they still talk about, well, because the real story is likely a lot more interesting than the story that's been shaped for us. And so we start trying to figure out, well, why would Israel tell these kind of stories? Why would they borrow myth from here and legend from here? And how did it function in their time, in their culture? What did they incorporate these ideas to do? That's much more interesting because that's how human beings get along. That's how they survive. Um,
Yep.
yeah. So trace the real story. Don't be afraid to be skeptical. You'd be surprised what you might
That's
find
right.
out. Yeah.
That's right.
Hey,
That's
Scott,
right.
thank you for your time. Thank you for sharing your
Yeah,
story.
Brady.
Anybody out there who's watching this, drop a comment in the chat. Anything in Scott's story that you relate to. And Scott, feel free to come back by and answer a few questions in the chat for those who are checking out your story.
You got it.
Yeah. Thanks so much. Till next
Peace.
time.
All right.